Southgate House Springs. Pray this finds you well and that the Lord is encouraging you, strengthening you in the scriptures. Um, hard times, hard times in the world. I'm going to try again. I had recorded a good section of this and then found out that somehow the recording had stopped. So that was a bummer. But I'm going to start over and we're going to get into it. We are going to be talking about the last part of Revelation 13 and the other beast coming up out of the sea, out of the sand, and this is who we'd also refer to as the false prophet, and the false prophet is doing stuff alongside the Antichrist, whoever that is, or those people are, the Antichrist system, the Antichrist empire, whatever. And we talked a little bit about last week about how the Bible seems to talk about the beast as though it's a person, also as if it's a kingdom, an empire, a country. There's different ways, and so the context kind of determines how we understand whether we're talking about an individual or a group of people or whatever. So in a similar way, the way we know that this is kind of how the Bible works is that throughout the Old Testament prophets, there's an idea referred to as where, like in Isaiah 53, a famous passage we all know, we talk about the suffering servant. Well, in Isaiah, I think 42 or something like that, somewhere in there, the writer refers to Israel, and it's very, very, very clear that Israel is the servant of God, the people of Israel, and we obviously attribute the suffering servant also to a messianic title, and so there is some overlap and some mixing of terms when you talk about the servant in the prophets. And so similar to that, when there are times when the prophets are talking about the servant of God and it refers to the people of Israel, there are also times when we see there be an application where the servant is also referring to the Messiah, and in part that's because there is an overlap in a way that they operate, meaning Israel is God's servant. He chose them. They are his chosen ones, and he's chosen them to administrate his kingdom in the age to come, and he's chosen them as his own special inheritance in the earth. And so they are his servants. They have failed in their role in many ways up till now, and so God has sent the Messiah. And one of the main tasks the Messiah accomplished while he was on the earth was that he actually was an example of what was expected of the Jewish people. So here comes Jesus, the Jewish man, and he showed the Jewish people how they ought to have been living in light of their calling as the chosen people of God. And so Jesus, the Messiah, also becomes the servant of God. And so you see how there's like a little bit of different ways to refer to the same word. The servant is also, it's a collective and in a corporate group, but it's also at times referring to an individual. In the same way, we can also think about the beast and the Antichrist empire and stuff like that. So it's very confusing. I'm not 100%, like, I wouldn't stake my life on a lot of my understanding right now, because it's just, there's a lot of possibilities as to what the meanings in some of these passages are. So we are going to be reading a little bit in 2 Thessalonians, because the activity of the false prophet is directly related to a lot of the activity of the Antichrist. And we get a picture of what's going on when the Antichrist is on the scene in 2 Thessalonians 2. And we want to read a little bit about that. And because the main point of reading through the Bible in general, but the book of Revelation is that we are trying to understand what's coming at the end of the age, and we want to be ready to endure it. We want to be ready to face it and not have anyone, any us or our family or loved ones be unprepared and not be ready for what's coming. So we want to have understanding, and we want to be able to be ready for it. So I'm going to start reading out of 2 Thessalonians 2. We'll get into Revelation 13, last part of that in a little bit, and we'll try and put some of this together. So in chapter 2 of 2 Thessalonians, starting in verse 3, this is a great phrase that Paul starts off with, and he says, "Let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come," it meaning the end of the age, "unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction," the Antichrist. And so this is a powerful warning. And he says, let no one deceive you. Why? Because there's going to be a spirit of deception unleashed on the earth, and people and systems trying to deceive people at the end of the age. And we must be in every way ready to take it on. You've probably heard this analogy before, but the best way to not be deceived about something is to not study all of the deception. The best way to not be deceived is to know the truth. And a good analogy for this is how people in the government are trained to detect counterfeit money. Counterfeit money, there are thousands and thousands of people trying this and producing counterfeit money. And with technology, we're getting better and better at producing undetectable counterfeit money. But when people are trying to detect it, they don't study all the different types of counterfeit. What they do is they study incessantly what the real one looks like. Because if you know the real one, front and back, inside out, every little detail about it, when a counterfeit comes along, you can spot it immediately because you know what the real bill looks like. And you don't have to know all the ins and outs of the counterfeit pieces. So in a similar way, we want to steep ourselves in the word and in truth and in understanding as much as we can, so that when the time comes and the spirit of deception is unleashed on the earth, we're not falling prey to it because we understand the truth. So the son of lawlessness is coming, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple, displaying himself as being God. So there is this man of lawlessness is not being subtle. This guy hates God, and he's making that very clear and very plain. And there's not going to be any wondering about that. He says, don't you remember I was telling you these things when I was with you? And you know what restrains him now, so that in his time he will be revealed. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. So that's a confusing thing that a lot of people have lots of different ideas on what it means. I don't know if I know exactly what it means. All I know is what's important for us is that the spirit of lawlessness, like the spirit of the Antichrist, like John says, is already at work, but, praise God, only in a restrained manner. And so as bad as things are today, as awful as some of the false teachers are, and as much wickedness and evil is going on in the earth, what we can be glad about is the fact that it's restrained in some manner, and that's the mercy of God. But it won't always be restrained. At some point, the restrainer will be removed, and this thing will be unleashed on the earth in full force. And we want to be ready to understand what's happening and not fall prey to it. So the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. And we'll read about that towards the end of the book of Revelation. That is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, with all power, signs, and false wonders, with the deception of wickedness, and for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, so as to be saved. So obviously, this lawless one, this son of destruction, who's coming, is um, with the activity of Satan and with all the power, signs, and false wonders. So remember when we read in the first part of Revelation 13, the beast coming up out of the sea received his power and authority from the dragon, who is the beast, who is the devil and Satan. And so this here is the same person we're talking about here. This is the beast, but he's called the man of lawlessness here in Paul's letter. And he is coming with the activity and the power of Satan with signs and false wonders. Now we're going to go on and read in Revelation 13, talking about some of these signs and wonders as well, and these power displays. And the truth is that these things they don't seem to me to be false or made up or tricks. And here's why I say that. Because he's got power and he's got authority, and it's been given to him by Satan, and we are under the power of the evil one in this age, right? Paul says that in Galatians, I think, or wherever he says it. Sorry for not knowing the reference to that, but Satan has been given a measure of power, and we have to figure. We're just like, do with that what you will. And so the words here were in verse 9, where he says power, signs, and false wonders. Power, signs, and wonders, these are all the same words that it uses in the Gospels to describe the different works of Jesus. So it's not some sort of it's not using a different word to describe the signs and wonders and the power that the Antichrist is working with than it did when Jesus or any of the apostles or anything like that used. So these are the same words related to power and signs. And so false wonders, I know it says the word false there. My best take on that up to this point is that it's referring to basically that these things are done in order to deceive people. They're false in that they don't lead to truth, and they're not pointing people to the Lord or to Jesus. They're pointing people away from him. So do with that what you will. It's, just my take on it right now. But here's the people that are getting deceived. The people who are getting deceived are those who did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. When we talk about when the apostles and Jesus talk about being saved, they're not talking in their minds. They're not imagining a time when they said a prayer. They're not imagining a time when they first met Jesus. Remember, some of them actually met him. So, they are not thinking about some sort of experience they had that gave them an emotional response or something like that, which I'm fine with having experiences with the Lord and an emotional response to it and those things like that. And I'm thankful because it can encourage us, they can strengthen us. But I am, when they're talking about being saved, they're talking about being saved from the wrath to come. That's like the part that they just don't say all the time. Paul says it sometimes, but not all of them say it, but that's what's implied and that's what's understood. They did not receive the truth so as to be saved from the wrath to come. Because if you don't adhere to the truth, then you won't be saved from the wrath to come. You'll be deceived, and you will not be able to stand against the power of deception and wickedness that's coming on the earth at the end of the age. So my encouragement so far, right, like just with that, I want to say how important it is that we receive and that we ask God for a love of the truth. Lord, help me to want to dig into the word. Help me to want to read and gain understanding. And then it's going to be a little bit of discipline on our part to dig in, spend time reading, listening to teachers, listening to other people, but reading books, reading commentaries. Like we got to put in the time to gain understanding. Our faithful brothers who have written the scriptures to us, they didn't just like invent this stuff or just like have enough quiet times to have all this understanding. They were well read. They understood what the Word of God, the Tanakh, the Old Testament, was saying, and they read and they got understanding and they put in the time, and nothing less should be expected of us. And so let's give ourselves to understanding the truth and understanding what God is saying and asking of us, so that we will not be deceived. Like, that's the whole point. So there's a little bit of a backdrop of what's going on with the end of the age, the activity of the lawless one or the Antichrist, and so we read a little bit about that, the first part of chapter 13 last week, and we're going to start in verse 11 this week. And remember, we're trying to gain understanding what's happening, and to be ready. And I just want to read real quick as I'm finishing up that idea on not being deceived and not being uneducated or without understanding. In Ephesians 5 verse 6, Paul says, "Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things, the wrath of God comes on those who are disobedient." And so the idea here, Paul's saying, don't be deceived with empty words, meaning people are going to come and they're going to try to deceive you. Their words have no value, no weight. But if you don't know that, you can easily be deceived. So that's my point of understanding and knowing the truth, because if we know the truth, if we know the word, we are not going to be easily deceived, because we're going to be able to say that person is not speaking the truth. That's not what the scriptures say. They're deceiving people. And so in the wrath of God that's coming, that we're trying to be saved from, that Paul says in Thessalonians, is coming on those who are disobedient. I just want to point that out, because it's not those that didn't have the proper enlightenment, the proper understanding, but the point is that the proper understanding leads to obedience. It leads to action. It leads to doing something with your faith. Faith and obedience seem inseparable in the scriptures as far as I'm concerned. So having faith but not living in a way that's pleasing to God, to me, is an indication you don't actually have faith. So the wrath of God is coming upon the disobedient, and obviously the idea is disobedient to God's word. So there's an inseparable link between faith and disobedience and understanding, So, little bunny trail, but back to Revelation 13. We're going to read Revelation 13 starting in verse 11. Then I saw another beast. Sorry for the noise, got people driving by here. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of all men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast, who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would speak and cause as many who do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And he causes all, the small, the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead. He provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, so I'll just start with this. If you want to know what the number of the beast, 666, means, you'll have to ask someone else. I have no idea. There's been a lot of, endless speculation as to what 666 means, as to what the name of the beast, the name of the number of the beast. All of these things are just like endless speculation, and since it's not explicit, we have no idea 100% what we're talking about. But we're going to go back. back up to the top. So that was just one to read through that. I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. Remember, the first one came up out of the sea. Could be indicative of coming up out of the nations, not just the water or the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea. But he is coming up out of the sea. Could be indicative of coming up out of the nations. The second beast came up out of the earth. So he's coming up out of the land, which to me indicates that he's coming up out of that general region of the Middle East and maybe even specifically Israel. He exercises all the authority of the first beast. So the authority and the power given to the first beast from the dragon is given also to this guy, to this beast. He has two horns like a lamb, right? And so there could be an element of him being deceptive in his appearance, but his message and his goal are similar in that he aims to deceive. He makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. Remember, there is a beast who has a fatal head wound, and then it is healed. And we don't know if this is a person. Did this person literally get a sword, that get killed in the head with the sword? Or is this a metaphorical term where, God says, if you don't repent, I'm bringing the sword. And it's symbolic of bringing judgment on a nation or on a people. And so we don't know with 100% certainty what exactly we're talking about as far as the sword, and if the head is a person or a group or a nation or whatever. But he causes all those who worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. And so this is interesting because it harkens me back to, and of course we've referenced Daniel a little bit already in our study of Revelation because there's a lot of overlap. But it's interesting to me because remember they create that image to Nebuchadnezzar, and you have to worship it or else you're thrown into the fire and all that kind of stuff. So interesting parallels between that. There's going to be some real resistance that must be taken place by followers of Jesus, and it could cost us our lives. Verse 13, he says he performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. And so that's interesting to me because this is part of those signs and wonders, those power signs that he's conducting. And he's going to cause fire. And like, who else did that? Like Elijah did that. Like there's going to be convincing reasons to listen to this guy or to these people, because they're going to do things that are like, man, how could he do that if God wasn't with him? And so when multiple people are performing miracles and signs and wonders at the same time, everybody professing to be from God or whatever, the way we know is we've got to have discernment, we've got to have understanding in the Word. We really got to be people of the Word, people of the book, as it's said in other cultures. And understand and gain understanding so that we're not deceived. But he's going to make fire come down out of heaven. It's crazy. He deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which were given to him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. So here we go. We got this person or this empire or whatever. It's been healed, and he's saying we're gonna worship this thing. And by worship, it could mean a number of things. I don't think the idea we should have in our head is that they put an image of the beast and everyone goes and they raise their hands and it's like worshiping the beast. No, rather they're giving allegiance. They're pledging allegiance, loyalty. They are following, meaning obeying orders, things of that nature. And remember, he's deceiving. So it may not be as blatant as we think. It may not just be like, he's the devil and you're going to worship him. Or it's probably not going to be that blatant. because he's deceiving. And when people deceive, they don't tell the truth, they disguise the truth in order to get you to do something that you probably shouldn't do. It was given him, again, it was given him to give breath to the image of the beast. These are really wild things, and we don't really know, of course. Is this legitimate, like, crazy stuff happening, meaning there's going to be some statue and it's going to speak and give, and it's like, this is crazy because in our day, okay, this is 2,000 years ago, and here we are in 2025, and are we talking about holograms? Are we talking about AI? What is happening? A lot of different things could be at play here. We don't know. But it seems like this guy's operating on some level with power and signs, and he's going to cause the beast to speak, the image of the beast. And he would cause as many as who didn't worship the image of the beast to be killed. So remember, that's like the Nebuchadnezzar thing. If you don't worship at the time the music plays, you'll be killed. And we are going to have the strength of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to not bow the knee to the image. So there's going to be a lot of pressure to give some sort of allegiance or loyalty to this image and this person. And we need to have understanding. We need to have understanding for ourselves, for our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our family, and we need to be able to be voices that can resist and give wisdom in a time when there is a spirit of deception on the earth. Okay, and what everybody's waiting for. The last few verses. He causes all, the small, the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slave, to be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead, and he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. And here's wisdom: let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Like I said, I have no clue. But what's going to happen here is, we've always we've been speculating for decades and decades. Is it a microchip? Are they going to put a microchip in your hand? Is it a tattoo? Is it nanotechnology? You got these brain chips that are developed, people putting in their brains and different things like that. Is Elon the Antichrist? But there's an old practice called gematria, where you can calculate like each. It is very difficult to explain and understand, and I don't understand it completely. But the gist of it is, you get letters have corresponding numbers to it, and so you can take names and it can have a corresponding number to what that name comes out to be. And there have been endless proposals as to what 666 means and who it is, and it's like, it's just so many people who are now gone and dead, and some people who are alive. It doesn't matter. Point is that people have been using that gematria for a long time to try and calculate who this person is. And what we know is that this person is against God. He wants to be God. He proclaims himself to be God. And so he's not to be trusted. He's not to be listened to or followed or worshipped. But he's going to make it very hard. No one will be able to buy or sell if you don't have the mark on your hand or your forehead. So what does that mean? We don't know what the mark is. I've heard it proposed that the mark is actually kind of translates to be really kind of like a branding. You ever seen people get, instead of tattoos, they get like branded signs on them. It's like a branding. There's no mistaking it. Like it's not an accident kind of a thing. It's not like you thought, oh, I'm gonna get like a glucometer that's a little sensor inserted under my skin so that it can tell me what my blood sugar is in a really consistent and accurate way. and then find out later, ha, tricked you, that's the mark of the beast. And I think the one thing I do want to make clear, no one's taken the mark of the beast accidentally. As we see here, taking the mark and assigning your loyalty is purposeful. You're gonna it might be done under duress, but it's going to be done voluntarily. You're not going to wake up. You took a nap and you woke up and someone accidentally gave you the mark of the beast. Like, that's not it, because the whole point of the mark of the beast is that it's a swearing and an alliance, an allegiance, and a loyalty to the beast and his false prophet. And so that is not what's happening in regards to you accidentally take the mark. This is I am making a decision. I am staking my allegiances and loyalties are going to be with this man or with this empire or with this kingdom, and I'm going to forsake the Lord and Jesus. So that, I think, to me, is very clear. This is no accident. You can't accidentally get the mark. And so whatever the mark is, it's going to apply a serious amount of pressure to those who are faithful to Jesus. He is not, we may be restricted on, well, we will be to some degree, buy or sell. What does that mean? In the stock market, crypto, groceries, cars, like what does it mean? We don't know. But there's going to be restrictions. There's going to be pressure to take the mark. And this is the difficult part. You're going to have to make the decision to put your family through some real distress and some real trouble and possibly even death by saying, we're not taking the mark. We may go through a time of famine. We may not have food. I believe the Lord will be faithful, just like he was throughout the scriptures with the Jewish people, and he will provide a way. I think there will be ways for believers to get together, store up food, find ways to supply food, protect one another, care for one another. That doesn't mean it won't be hard. It will be very, very difficult in those days. But the Lord will be with us. That promise we have. And so we do want to close here. I just want to encourage us. So what does this mean for today? Get into the Word. Don't be how would I say this? Don't be apathetic towards the Word. Let's be serious. Let's dig in. Let's give our time to it. In the same way, I'm guilty that we spend time on social media and listening to video after video of Charlie Kirk's assassination, or video after video of Trump's assassination attempt, or what's going on in politics, or what's going on in Mr. Beast world, or whatever. Let's give ourselves in a serious and intentional way to studying the scriptures, to being a people who is prepared and ready for the things that are coming at the end of the age. So I want to encourage you, get a love for the truth so as to be saved. We want to be protected and preserved at the end of the age. Get into the Word. This is by far the thing that is going to be the most instrumental tool in helping you stay faithful to God and to not being deceived when there is a spirit of deception rampant in the earth at the end of the age. I bless you guys. I pray the Lord give you a spirit of prayer, a love for the scriptures, a burning desire to read and understand, and that we would be those who are ready to not only stand firm but help others gain understanding and stand firm when the pressures on the earth increase. Much love to you all. Bless you. Talk to you soon.